Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name is Jamie Kelsey with Foster Adopt Connect, and today for our fourth Friday live webinar, we are presenting on the topic of how to formulate a sensory diet for children with sensory needs. I will introduce myself, and then I will introduce, I have a guest here with me today. I am a trainer here at Foster Adopt Connect and also a foster and adoptive mom, and have been for about 3 years and been at Foster Adopt Connect for about 2 years. So I was particularly interested in this topic because my little boy has some sensory needs, and so I was able to find some really helpful information, and I'm going to bring it to you today. And so with me today is Tammy Spears, and so she's just going to kind of be my co-host today. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Spears. I am an adoptive mom. We have fostered for 22 years. We've adopted 22 children along the way. So this is a really good topic because we do and we have had kids with significant sensory needs, and it's a really good tool to have in your toolkit as you continue to foster and adopt children.
Awesome. Well, just 22?
Yeah. That's it. I tapped out. I'm sorry.
Right. Okay, that's understandable. So we have our normal disclaimer that, you know, whenever we're talking about foster care and adoption and kids from trauma, you know, there can be some uncomfortable subjects that come up, and our intention is never to offend. So if you hear something that's troubling or worries you, definitely feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email after the webinar. I don't think that you'll be too frightened by today's topic. This is all pretty helpful stuff. I did decide to go ahead and throw up a second disclaimer, though, because I want you guys to know I am not an occupational therapist, nor is Tammy. We are foster and adoptive parents, like we said. So the information that you're getting today, we don't intend for you to, diagnose kids that you think might have sensory issues. It's really just, a lot of kids from trauma just tend to have some sensory issues in general. So they might not even have, a sensory disorder per se. So we just want to say, if you are concerned about a kid, definitely take these tips and tricks and, use them however you can to help your kiddo. But if you have some real concerns, definitely consult your pediatrician, consult an occupational therapist, for sure.
And get a referral.
Yeah.
And then know.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So just so you know what we'll be covering today, I want you guys to, obviously understand the definition of sensory processing disorder. We'll kind of go over some basics of that, because some of us are maybe taking this webinar because you suspect some sensory processing issues, but don't have, a real intense grasp of that. I want you to have a good understanding of the 8 sensory systems, which, we used to just think it was, the 5 senses.
Right.
That's all we had. I was really shocked to find out there's 8. Obviously, then I want you to understand the sensory diet. And I'll say right now, for those of you who are sitting here waiting to write down recipes, that's not what it is.
Not that kind of diet. Not that kind of diet.
I really did. When I heard that term, though, I was like, so there's something you can feed your child to help them with sensory issues. Cool. I'm
in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
So we will obviously explain the concept of a sensory diet more. And then I want you to leave with, several different ideas, activities, extra resources, to help your sensory seeking or sensory avoiding kid. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to make sure I have everything lined up here, and we'll get started. So first of all, sensory processing disorder is a neurophysiologic condition in which sensory input, either from the environment or one's body, is poorly detected, modulated, or interpreted, and or to which atypical responses are observed. And I think the really interesting point is the next one, where psychologist A. Jean Ayers likened it to a traffic jam. And it's just like, the sensory input coming into the brain is just jammed up and not interpreted the way that it would be for a typical child or a typical person. Tammy, do you have kids that tend to have that?
I do, because I think that everything comes in at once for them. There's no green lights and then red lights. I think all of their stuff comes flooding in, and they're very easily overwhelmed, and it looks like a tantrum, but what it is there's too many things coming in at one time, and they need someone to help them filter some of those things out.
And I think a lot of us adults have that too. There are some of us who are sensitive to lots of noise or lots of light. So I definitely identified with some things in here as well. So here are those 8 sensory systems that I referenced before. So obviously you have visual, auditory, tactile or touch, olfactory, your sense of smell, and then gustatory or taste. And so the 3 that I was not aware of before, the first one of those would be vestibular. Okay, so we'll talk more about what that means and what it looks like, but you can kind of tell from the graphic. It has to do with movement. It has to do with your balance and that inner ear kind of structure. Proprioception, we'll talk more about that, but you can kind of get a guess from the visual. And interoception. Okay, so we will dive into all of those and kind of demystify those 3 that probably a lot of us are not so familiar with. First, some fundamental facts that I thought were interesting kind of in my research along the way. So first of all, SPD, or sensory processing disorder, is a complex disorder of the brain that affects developing children and adults. I don't know if I have this in my fundamental facts, but it's actually not in the DSM-5. So I found that to be kind of shocking. And I think just because SPD, I don't know, I think they're now kind of considering it a spectrum disorder.
And I think that they're putting a lot of things together that seem familiar. So like they might be putting sensory processing disorder in on the autism spectrum.
Yeah.
So I think in some ways that's true and good, and in other ways that's not true and good, because a child may not be on the spectrum, so to speak, but they have sensory processing issues that are not related to autism. It's something completely different. So, yeah, it is interesting how they're being grouped now.
Yeah, so I didn't know how I felt about that. But it is what it is now. Parent surveys, clinical assessments, laboratory protocols exist to identify children with SPD. In other words, you guys are probably familiar with, when you go to those behavioral health clinics, you have to fill out a ton of surveys and questionnaires. So that's one of the ways in which those kind of issues can be kind of identified. At least 1 in 20 people in the general population may be affected by SPD. So I know that's not a lot, but it really kind of seems like a lot when you think about it. Children who are gifted and those with ADHD, autism, Fragile X syndrome, the prevalence of SPD is much higher for those people. And studies have found a significant difference between the physiology of children with SPD and children who are typically developing. So I thought those were some interesting facts. Now I think number 6 is pretty similar to the last one, but just saying that there's a significant difference between the physiology of children with SPD and children with ADHD. Also, sensory processing disorder has unique sensory systems that aren't explained by other known disorders, which again makes it kind of difficult when you lump it in with other spectrum disorders.
Absolutely.
I found out heredity may be one cause of the disorder. And then laboratory studies suggest that the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems are not functioning typically in children with SPD. So that's pretty major. And then preliminary research data support decades of anecdotal evidence that occupational therapy is an effective intervention for treating the symptoms of SPD. So that's why I said in the beginning, if you suspect these issues with your child or children, definitely consult your pediatrician, and they will probably refer you to an occupational therapist. All right. So the sensory diet, like I said, it is not actually food, but kind of like, you know, we try to eat a balanced diet. We try to get all the food groups in. We want to do that with a sensory diet and make sure that our kids get a range of sensory inputs that both help to arouse and calm their sensory systems. And for some of our kids, it's a balance of arousal and relaxation. And then some kids are very one way or the other. So we have to have lots of sensory input that arouses their system, whereas other kids need lots of sensory input that calms their system. So we'll talk about, you know, kind of how to choose some activities to put in your child's, you know, everyday routine that helps to do those things. Each child has a unique set of sensory needs, kind of already said that. Generally, a child whose nervous system is over-aroused and too wired needs more calming input, while the child who is more under-aroused and too tired needs more alerting input. And so again, you know, I'll give you some, you know, tips. I'll give you some activity ideas, but an occupational therapist, really, you want to bring them on board if you suspect some sensory processing disorder issues, so that they can make sure it's completely balanced. And, you know, you can kind of tweak that along the way too. All right. So hopefully what we want out of a sensory diet, obviously combined with your professional intervention, activities that perk up your child or calm them down are not only effective in the moment, they're actually shown to help change your child's nervous system over time. And that helps them to better tolerate sensations and situations that are challenging for them right now. Sometimes school can be challenging just because they're over-aroused, they're overstimulated throughout the school day. It can help them regulate emotions, alertness, and increase their attention span. Reduce unwanted sensory seeking and sensory avoiding behaviors. I find that those behaviors just get seen as behaviors, not just a sensory behavior.
And I think that it's even in school settings, those things are just seen as negative behaviors and not that a child is over-aroused by all the input that's coming in, because you have to think about the sights, the sounds, the smells, and things that are going on in that setting, you know, background noise, closer noise, people close to you, far from you, people that have different smells on their clothes, and that can be really, really overstimulating for our kids, and then they just see it, oh, he just doesn't like being in this room. No, he's trying to escape all of the incessant input.
Right.
So he's figured out those things that can help me, that can help rescue me.
Right.
And so it's not that I'm doing this to you. I am trying to save myself because I'm overwhelmed and I need less of what's happening right now.
Right.
So when you get the assessment, when you get a good when you get a good diagnostics, diagnostician.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying.
I see.
So when you can get that really, really good diagnosis and they can kind of pinpoint these are their areas of real sensitivity, and these are some of the things that they can do in school to help with that. I mean, because it's not always, oh, just cut the tags out of the back of their shirt and they're going to be fine.
Right.
It's not that kind of thing. It's, this is a lot for me.
Right.
And I'm going to need some things to help me get stronger to be able to filter out some of this input.
Right. So. Yeah, I think with my son's behaviors, they're just seen as behaviors, and the teachers are kind of baffled by, well, there's no, I don't see a trigger, I don't see a pattern, and I think that's because at some point he's just becoming overstimulated or understimulated and goes seeking stimulation. So there's not really a pattern to it. So, but they're just seen as behaviors, you know, when I think there's a sensory drive behind those. So your sensory diet consists of a range of activities that target those different sensory needs. You know, again, there's sensory seeking and sensory avoiding. And when you leave the conference today, you will get an email with some attachments. There is a checklist, and unfortunately, it's not a checklist that will, you know, kind of help you say, well, my kid is sensory seeking or sensory avoiding in this or that area. You really do kind of have to go through it as a parent and look at where the boxes are checked. It does group them in, you know, categories of visual, auditory, etc. So you can kind of see a pattern if you have a lot that are checked on sensory seeking or sensory avoiding. You can kind of group them together, but it's really just meant to guide you and your occupational therapist towards those activities that would help them. So obviously, again, collaborate with that occupational therapist, determine the types of sensory input that the child needs, and implement those specific activities every day. Document, see how they do on those, and then change it up if need be. So some activities might suit one child and not another, or they might suit a child better in a different order, or if you just slightly change one of the activities. So it really does kind of take some tweaking along the way and just being aware of how it's affecting your child. So getting into those extra senses, proprioception was one of those that I was not aware of before. It was not in the 5 senses that, you know, I learned about in school. So for those of you who are like me and are kind of new to this one, proprioception or proprioceptive input, this is sensation from your joints, muscles, connective tissues that underlie your body awareness. So this can be obtained by lifting, pushing, pulling. I've got pictures here to demonstrate, you know, a kid hanging from monkey bars. Well, that's using that child's own weight to put pressure on the joints and muscles, connective tissues. A child jumping really does the same thing. And jumping, I'll put that in again at a few other intervals because that can satisfy lots of different sensory needs. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, proprioception. You know, kids who are kind of lacking in this, you might see them getting rough with other kids, with other people, with toys. You know, and those are the kids that get labeled as aggressive when they're not necessarily meaning to be aggressive. They're just needing that extra proprioceptive input.
Because they're not aware of their body's force in the world. Like mm-hmm. They don't have a really good concept of what this is, but they know when they're pushing and when they're pulling and when they're grabbing, their body feels right in that moment. Mm-hmm. And so if you can spin that and make this a positive interaction for all of the children, it's a better idea. It's a better, that child gets their need met, but they can still be with other kids because those are the kids, honestly, they get sent to the intervention room. They get sent to a buddy room, and they're hanging off their chair upside down because they're still trying to get that need met. And now you have to go to another step of discipline when, hanging from the monkey bars could have regulated, or bouncing on a mini trampoline would have helped regulate that sensation for them. So,
yeah, I would get the nice hands feedback a lot from my son's daycare, and I really just thought, I don't think he means to be rough or aggressive. I think there's something else there. That was really before I'd done any research on this. So vestibular would be another one that, you might not have ever heard of. So this is the sense of movement centered in your inner ear. So like if you've ever gotten an ear infection and your balance kind of went off, it really is kind of centered there. So any type of movement will stimulate the vestibular receptors. So for kids, the helpful movements would be like spinning, swinging, hanging upside down. Your kids that maybe rock or just need to be constantly moving, that might indicate that they are seeking that, or kids who don't want to be rocked or held. This could be lacking just because, some of our kids might come from neglect situations where they weren't rocked that much, they weren't picked up, nobody walked with them or, rocked them to soothe them, and so that might cause a deficit. And
they've learned to get it from themselves because in their infancy, in their early childhood, they were not able to get those needs met by adults. So they now feel responsible for seeking that out and getting that regulated. So, there may be some teaching that'll have to happen so that they can accept you swinging with them or swinging them, or helping them to hang upside down with, pillows or a crash pad underneath them so that, they don't wipe out as soon as they let go. So there's going to be some teaching, but absolutely it's all that stuff they didn't get before.
Right. And my son never wanted to swing at the park. That's always the one thing that, I think kids kind of run towards the swings and fight over them, and he never was interested. So I think there was a lack there that he was trying to meet that in other ways, but once he got comfortable with that sense of motion in his inner ear, he's totally fine with doing it now. So, and then the bottom picture there, that is, I forget what that's called, but I do have that in the links on our resources page at the end of the training, so that if you are looking for some extra things, I will also give you a link to some really cool sensory products that we just saw today that Target is offering. So there are some really cool things out there to help with that.
And some really cool shopping.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
I really like
really
shopping.
Cool shopping. I like that. I like that part of it.
Doesn't matter what I'm shopping for.
It does not.
Let's see. So we'll go to another one we're probably a little bit more familiar with, which is tactile. And I like the baby sitting in the, I don't know if it's a bin of rice or sand, but this can be, there's several aspects to the tactile. So this could be light touch, deep pressure, texture, temperature, vibration, and pain. And then there's also the oral tactile. And so this is different from the gustatory or taste. This is kids who have issues with different textures in food.
And also, it's just, I have my little love. He can eat applesauce if it's not runny. If it's thicker, so like the cups are thicker.
Right.
But the squeeze bottles of applesauce are thinner for obvious reasons. They got to get through that little, and kids can almost drink it.
Yeah.
And it was a big adjustment for him to go from that texture of it to that texture of it.
Wow.
And there's lots of stuff that he doesn't eat. He goes, that feels nasty in my mouth.
Wow.
And like he has the words to say, that
That's
feels
amazing.
yucky in my mouth, and he's just like, ah.
Right.
And he's like scraping his tongue, get that off me. And
Wow.
so we were like, okay, duly noted, kind sir.
Yeah.
And you move to, but he's also got that sensitivity of brushing his teeth. So we have gone through lots of different types of toothpaste, tooth powder,
Wow.
toothbrushes. So he really struggled with a lot of the oral sensitivity in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's getting better. He's in first grade now, so he's like, huh. And he's discovered hot chips, so that is just the devil.
Oh, wow.
But, I mean, but it was a long walk up to it because there were just certain things he was like,
yeah.
I don't want that in my mouth. I don't like how that feels in my mouth.
And I think a lot of parents miss that because they think that a child is maybe just being willful at the dinner table. You know, you have to try it, and sometimes it's not even the taste of something. It's the texture. Yeah, we miss
it's
that.
Absolutely the texture. We were able to. He does not like cauliflower or broccoli, and I think it's just the way it feels in his mouth. But I did the cauliflower rice and the cauliflower mashed potatoes, and he was all in.
Wow.
Because he did not realize, because it did not feel the same in his mouth.
Right.
We were doing raw vegetables, and so the way it felt in his mouth then, he was like, nope.
Right.
But once it was, he thought mashed potatoes, and it had all the garlic and the butter, and oh yeah, that was gone.
Right.
That was great. But
see,
raw, he was
change
like,
it up.
nope. So I'm going to meet you where you are, buddy. Whatever that's going to be, I'm going to meet you where you are, and we're going to make this deal work.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah. So this is a good one for I just last summer I've never been to a hardware store. I guess I have, but it was like probably my second time in a hardware store, and I was like, you guys have sand? Because I'm as little as I go to a hardware store, I go to craft stores even less. So I was like, well, go to a craft store for sand or go to a hardware store. I'll go to the hardware store. So I bought a big bag of sand and some of those plastic shoe boxes that you can get at Dollar Tree. And also Dollar Tree, I was able to get a bunch of little toys to kind of wedge in the sand. This is a good time to get the sand tools like the rakes and the shovels. And so you can just something that small. You don't have to have one of those big sand boxes in your backyard. That's something that even in the wintertime, you know, we could do out in the garage or at the table, if we were okay cleaning up a little bit of sand mess, just that small shoe box full for that tactile sensation. And kinetic sand sometimes is a good one. Yeah.
Beans. Yeah, you can get pretty creative in the things that and they love that. You can see the joy in them because their fingers spread out and they're like,
We like it too. I like it as an adult.
Yeah, absolutely. Play-Doh, whatever. I mean, it just meeting those needs and them going, okay, yeah, this is okay. I like this feeling.
Yeah. And just keep in mind, I tend to focus just on the touchy touch. So again, there's that oral, but that deep pressure is part of it too. And so there's some pretty cool products to help kids who are needing that tactile sense on their bodies, whether it's a light touch or a deep touch. There's lots of cool things on the market to help out with that.
Neoprene vests and weighted vests and weighted blankets and weighted lap pads are like the jam.
Yeah.
Because they can just sit there with whatever they're doing with that on their lap and get calm and then take it off and decide to go do something else. But they were able to get centered because they got that need met.
Yeah.
So,
or weighted stuffed animals. I've seen those. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a ton of cool stuff out there. Auditory, of course, we are familiar with this one. It's a hearing. I think this one can be easily overlooked. We have kids who can be really sensitive to this and kids who tend to seek this. And so you might have a really loud talker or a yeller who's really not trying to be disruptive or disrespectful, but who is needing that need met, whereas then you have avoiders, and I can identify with this. If the TV's on and somebody is talking to me, it feels like a train wreck inside my head. Yeah.
You're like,
yeah, I can't do it. And so there are some ways there. I think there are some pretty easy ways to deal with that one because, you can plug a kid in, to some music, some just gentle background music. You can have a white noise machine, whereas, a kid who is overstimulated by noise, you could really just put those headphones on with nothing and kind of block out the noise, or just make sure that they have some downtime at the end of every day or at intervals during the day when they're probably starting to feel overstimulated by noise.
They have some really cool ones on Amazon, those little headphones. And they're not headphones in the sense in that picture. They are headphones. They are like a headband.
Oh, wow.
For kids that can't handle the cupping around their ear, because that's a strange sensation for some kids. So it's this sweet little headband that goes on, and you can get it with their little name on it, and it just has little tiny speakers right where their ears would be.
Wow.
So it's kind of not shoved in and not closed in, but just around.
Right.
And so that was a really neat little thing too. So you could either have it plugged in or use it to muffle sound.
Right.
For kids that are that's just too much auditory input for me. I cannot. And I had one kiddo that when he had that sensory overload auditorily, he would fall asleep.
Oh, wow.
Because that was his way to check out of that sound.
Right.
And so, they were like, God, is he narcoleptic? I'm like, no, that was way too much noise for him.
Just done.
He's like, Goop.
Yeah.
I will solve this problem. I will go to sleep.
That's pretty effective.
And it was very effective. We took him to a concert, and that's where we figured out. Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, so Toby Mac got napped on.
Aww.
So, yeah, we figured that out. So that was just, and we just kind of found little cool things along the way to kind of, buffer out sound because he, could not navigate it. And now he's got every light in the house turned on and all the music going and TV on, and so. Yeah.
It seems like, just like what it said in the beginning, you can really help build up a tolerance with some of these activities that you end up, using with those kids.
Mm-hmm.
Visual can be a big one, and I put a picture of a classroom, which I should also say I'm a former elementary school teacher. This is like every elementary classroom I've ever seen. You have your own decorations and you have the kids' artwork. I don't know. We're very geared towards
color.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a lot for our kids. So that second picture, I don't know if you guys are getting that effect on your end, but if you look at it, if you turn your head a little, it's just like, ooh, that's
weird. A lot. That's okay. No.
Right.
No.
It's bothersome.
It is.
And so I think that's what it becomes like for our kids who, need to avoid that. It becomes a little bit much. So yeah, they can become kind of tuned out. Same with any of these. The sound, just like Tammy said, if they start seeming kind of tuned out, not responding, it just might be overstimulation to the visual.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just having a really calm retreat for those kids, whether in the classroom or at home, really might be the best way to avoid some of those kind of meltdowns that happen from overstimulation. Hard time with that word.
Mm-hmm.
Olfactory, so smells. And I find this one hard too, not just for sensory, but since we loop smells in sometimes with our memories this one can
Absolutely.
be triggering for lots of different reasons.
And it's triggering for adults too, because what our kiddos are triggered by a smell, and that reminds them of their family or the place they used to live or some of their stuffed animals, and they seek to recreate that smell. And adults have issues with that, but they're seeking that memory that's linked to that smell. And we are like, what on earth is that?
Right.
So very much, yeah.
But then you have kids who are understimulated in that area, and I've heard from parents with both on this one and the taste. My kid will just go up to a stranger and smell them, and that's so embarrassing. Or my kid will lick the banister at a store, but they're seeking that input. So I have to share one for this one. So I was in a parent-teacher conference at my son's preschool, and we were talking about, behaviors and rewards. And, the teacher said, well, the kids all want to get smelly spots. And I didn't say anything. I was like, I should know what that means, or maybe I don't want to know what it means. She brought it up again, and I said, I just have to ask, what is a smelly spot? And so she said, well, she brought out a little tub of those cheap flavored chapsticks. And she said stickers fall off or, get wet when you wash your hands and kids are upset. But we can reward them for sitting quietly at circle time by just putting a little dot of chapstick on their hand. And then they like to sit there and smell their hand. And I think for a kid who is kind of seeking sensory input, or a kid who maybe just kind of needs some input to stay calm, that just being right there, maybe with their weighted, lap pad and their little smelly spot, I was like, that's amazing. I love it.
At our alternative school, they have little stuffed animals, frogs and little bears, and they put essential oils on them. So they'll have like a lavender frog, and they'll have like maybe bergamot on another one, and the kids will kind of come in. And it's very calming for them because they'll just kind of sit there and snuggle up with it and just smell that, just breathe that in, and they're like, little chamomile on there or whatever. They've used that, and that does tend to kind of bring them back down.
Yeah.
They're pretty escalated by the time they get to that, but that's a really good thing to try to put in as you see them beginning to get triggered. Make that available for them.
Yeah, I love that too. Such cool ideas. Gustatory or taste. So again, this one is different from, that oral tactile. And it is really strongly tied to smell too. I mean, you know that when you have a cold and you can't smell
anything,
then your taste is affected too. So those are pretty closely linked. So for your kids who are truly avoiding flavors because of the flavor, it could just be that they just weren't exposed to a broad range of flavors, and it's just about kind of introducing it in different ways to kind of build up their tolerance. So I love the idea, like your idea with the oral tactile and just changing the way you cook the vegetables. I think that would be effective with this one too, or cutting them in different shapes, just to kind of help introduce those slowly and broaden their tolerance.
We had a therapist that said we have to change these primitive palates, because we would always get kids that would come in and tell us, because we took older kids, I only eat the burritos out of the red pack. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. we cook here, so I don't know what that is. We can make burritos, but I don't know what that is. He goes, no, and I don't eat anything green, and I don't eat this, and I don't eat that.
Wow.
We just were not accustomed to those tastes, you know, and so we were like, well, until I figure out what the red package of burritos is.
Let's just get you used to home cooked.
We're going to do a little thing I like to call, you know, regular home cooking.
Yeah.
So we're going to have spaghetti and some garlic bread and some salad. Can we go? He's like, salad? And I'm like, yeah, but I got amazing salad dressing. So it was just like, try this. Oh, that looks good. Okay. All right, I can try that. But it was just, we didn't. It's still not really solid on the red package of burritos, but
I know
that's fine.
But I think there's something too. I have to think that it's something. You know, we talk about like a sluggish system. So maybe a kid with a sluggish gustatory system is the kid who's eating the hot chips and the Takis and the extremely sour stuff. But that is truly, I've seen so many kids just eat fistfuls of chips that would burn the hair
out of my nose. And for sure.
Yeah, so they're definitely trying to wake something up there. So going back to then one that you might not be so familiar with is interoception. So this is the internal sense that's responsible for knowing when you're hungry or full, when you have to go to the bathroom. It's just kind of your sense of yourself. And so like you might have kids who have bathroom accidents just because they don't have a good sense of how their body feels. So this is how your body feels. Or kids that don't know when to stop eating, or kids who don't know when to start eating, and because that sense of hunger maybe doesn't register with them. So maybe that kid gets hangry. One kid can't stop eating. So for this, yoga and mindfulness, deep breathing, those can all help. There's an amazing series of videos that you can find on YouTube, and it's called Cosmic Kids Zen Den.
And they are awesome. Let me tell you, that girl dressed up as Poppy.
Yes.
And my kids were all about doing that yoga that day.
Yeah.
She does the one for Aladdin. She does all these different mindfulness yoga. But we have a couple of kids that are, one in particular, he does not know when he's full. They come from a situation of neglect, and that has greatly altered his perception of when he's full. Because psychologically he doesn't know when he's going to eat again.
Yeah.
So he's like, no, just keep eating until there's nothing, and then see if you can get more. But he also never makes it to the bathroom on time. Because he doesn't listen to he can't hear the signals in his body.
Right.
It's not willful. It's not intentional. He's not wetting his pants. You know, he's 9. He's not doing that on purpose.
Right.
But he doesn't feel those signals until it's almost too late, and it's like, oh no, like, yeah, okay.
Right.
But here's what we're gonna do. But when we can get him to do yoga and do the mindfulness and do the stretching, he's much more successful in being dry and going, oh, I need to go to the bathroom now. Oh, I need to do this now. Oh, no, thank you. I don't want any of that.
Right. It calms that traffic jam.
It calms that crazy, I don't hear any of that noise. And then you can go, no, you're okay. You're full.
Yeah.
You're full. Your stomach is full. You don't want to eat anymore. Because he would eat until he got sick.
Yeah. And there's actually, in that series, there's one about mindfully eating. And so she encourages you to get a snack, like a fruit or something, and sit down, and she kind of walks you through tasting it, chewing it. Really doing it as an adult is pretty frustrating because she's like, put it in your mouth, but don't eat it. And that was kind of hard for me because I was like, no,
that's not what I do.
If it's in my mouth, I'm going to eat it.
got 5 more minutes before I have to do something else. I have to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think even for our kids, it might take a while. It might take some practice, but those are amazing. So there's yoga, mindfulness. You can pair it with essential oils. You can pair it with a lot of other things. The yoga is great for when the weather's bad and you can't get out. Who knows when it's going to stop raining. So, get that energy out. Yoga, you think, is a very calm sport, but when I get on the floor and do it with my son, I am wiped out. So it's pretty effective. So, yeah, and I don't think I linked that one on this slideshow, so I will make sure to email that out to participants. But again, it's Cosmic Kids Zen Den. All right, so now we get to how do we put this together? How do we take all of this information and, decide what activities do we loop in? So I've got some steps here, and again, please utilize the attachments with this training. You definitely want to do the checklist and see which are more weighted towards seeking or avoiding. And then, so what you want to do here, step 1 says make a list of the times of day or the environments where your child has the most challenges. Because it could be the sensory input in that situation or during that time of day. It tends to be high sensory input or low sensory input. Maybe your kid struggles when it's quiet time because they're seeking lots of input. So step 2, check off anything on the list that is caused by their sensory needs or you feel could be helped by sensory activities. So obviously if there's a struggle, for example, my son struggles with transitions, and we could say, there might be a sensory need during those times, but I'm going to take that one off because I don't think that it's necessarily driven by a sensory need. That's another thing to address. But if it's quiet time and he has trouble being quiet, there might be a sensory need there. Or if it's if it's recess time and it's indoors where it can be particularly overstimulating and loud and he has a meltdown, that could be sensory. Step 3 then is choose the sensory diet activities to try and offer before or during your child's challenging times. So right before or right after those times when you think they are having some potential sensory needs. And then step 4, watch to see if it works. Document, keep a log. I know that's kind of hard for us because we just parent in the here and now, but
you'll love it when you plan it.
Mm-hmm.
You will love it when you see, okay, this one worked, this one worked, this one worked. You will even be, and I'm not saying anyone in this room has done this before, but you may even figure out what that activity is, write it down on a card, have it laminated, punch a little hole in it, and put it on a ring for when that child is maybe starting to overstimulate or be overstimulated. You can say, I need you to get your work. I need you to get your brain work. Grab one of them.
Well, I know I'm not that organized, so that's you.
Okay. See, she just called me out, peeps. So I'm just like, but that's giving them buy-in. It's something that they can pick and then they can be in control of, but they know for sure which one they're feeling like, oh, I want to do this one. So I want to do this one and I'm doing this and I'm twirling around and I'm getting that, oh, yeah, because that inner ear, inner ear is getting what it needs right there. And it keeps from having all the blow-ups and all the screaming and all the yelling. And I like not having to parent on the cuff all the time because, like, there's 4 of them. They have me outnumbered. So, like, if I know that, oh, you know what, right around this time he's starting to get peckish, and we can get that snack in, and we can say, here's your portion, here's what you're going to have, and in 1 hour we're having dinner. Okay, I got it. This is what I'm, oh, yep, I am full right now. Ooh, I'm going to keep playing until dinner's ready because then I'll be hungry for that. So you just have to work at it and figure out what's going to work best for you and your family.
Yeah, and I mean it's crazy how skilled they are at getting those needs met. We tend to think that that kid is spiraling out, or they're being defiant, or we can't explain the behavior, but that kid is having some kind of behavior to meet a sensory need. And they're going to do it whether we present it to them in a constructive way or not. They're going to get that need met, and they're really good at it.
So you might as well try to strength-based do it in a way that they have some control. I mean, because we want our kids to become more independent, or they're going to live with you forever. So that's something to think about as well.
No. Yeah. Okay, so here's some examples. So like in the morning, and these are, again, don't pull this off and think, this.
Have to do all of that.
Right. Some of these are, again, going to be more towards arousing systems, and some are going to be geared towards calming systems. But this is just kind of an example of maybe somebody who made those lists. What are the times of day? How does my kid struggle? What could be the sensory need? So in the morning, maybe you have a kid with a sluggish system who just can't wake up, and they need that extra. They just need that extra boost in the mornings. You can massage their feet and back. Maybe somebody can do that for you. I don't know.
I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
I would be okay with that.
I think I need that. Maybe we get them going. I used to have to do this for my son. Would have to go in with an upbeat song, or else it was going to be a big fight. So
that is our Raining Taco song.
Raining Tacos.
It's Raining Tacos.
Huh.
Yes.
Okay.
If Alexa is perfect at it, you can say, Alexa, play Raining Tacos, and they know to get up, and their little heads are doing like this, and they are making their beds like this. I mean, and I'm telling you, that song really does help us get downstairs about 6 or 7 minutes faster.
Wow.
Than when I don't say, Alexa, play Raining Tacos.
Wow.
Alexa, start loop mode. So when it goes off, it comes right back on. So we're still going, and we're still going.
That sounds more kid appropriate. I would just do Meghan Trainor. So I'll have to check out Raining Tacos.
You'll have to check out Raining Tacos because it's
a
way cool song, and Blue. So there's 2 different songs that my kids are like, really, they're like, yep, that will get me moving in the morning, and it gets them downstairs, and that's my goal. Can we get downstairs fully dressed?
Wow.
Yeah.
And I have to put a plug in for, I do like some silly kid songs. Cuckoo Kangaroo, I think, are awesome. Those are really upbeat and funny, and can kind of get your kids moving too. This one is interesting, a vibrating toothbrush. So again, vibrations kind of go with the tactile. Yeah. So I would not have thought of that one, but that would be more towards arousing a system. Whereas if you had a kid who was sensitive to that, that would be, a huge no-no. So again, these aren't going to work for every kid. Maybe they need to start with a really crunchy cereal, or different types and textures of food. I think the picture of the kid on the spinning disc, I think now we have the name. I think that was a Dizzy Disc Jr. But again, that'll be in the resource links on the end. Or jump on a mini trampoline. Just set a timer, and you can make it a game. You can make it fun. I don't know any kid who doesn't like to jump on a trampoline.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't know those kids.
But yeah, all of those seem more geared towards a kid who maybe needs some a boost in the morning. After school. So again, if you have a kid who tends to be a little bit overstimulated by school, maybe you don't go to a playground. That can be a little bit overstimulating still. So if it's a kid who's overstimulated, we might need to go home and have some quiet rest time. But yeah, other activities, maybe go grocery shopping. They get that proprioceptive input from pushing the cart, spinning, whether it's, at the playground, or if you have the dizzy disc, wheelbarrow walking. And I show that in the picture there. Again, that would hit on the proprioceptive. That would even, I would say, hit tactile and vestibular. So a lot of these activities hit several at once. A therapeutic, or I'm sorry, like an exercise ball. And sometimes they have those in the classrooms for those kids.
Those are wonderful because that gives them that balance and that body awareness, and it doesn't make them feel restricted in the seat. And my little squirrel, they do like him having access to the exercise ball. When he was in preschool, they had a whole track for him at the back of the room.
Oh wow!
And because she adored him, he's really cute. So but it helped him focus, because if he wasn't trying to be still, he could hear every word that she said, and he could answer all of her questions if he wasn't using all his brain to be still.
They don't get that.
Yeah, so that was a really good way for him to start off, like, oh, learning is cool, because they're not going to expect me to be still, because I can't do that.
Right, and that's just, my son's preschool is, calm bodies, and I understand that, but sometimes a calm body is really a brain in distress.
He's a wiggler, so he will never have the calm body. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I just buy those teachers Dr. Pepper and chocolate.
Yeah.
So super sorry about that. But
yeah. My kid is probably the reason that you drink.
Yes. Yeah.
Oral work. This one's interesting. So sometimes sucking thick liquids through a straw, if you make a thick smoothie, or, even suckers would be effective for that. So for those kids who need that oral tactile sensation, eating crunchy foods, chewing gum, those can help with those oral tactile sensations. At dinner time, so helping with cooking, mixing and chopping. Yeah, there's your raining tacos.
It's raining tacos, guys.
Yep. Those would be all really good things, I would think, for the tactile. Also, if you have a kid who does have some avoidant, they avoid certain sensations or certain tastes, getting them involved in cooking it can help to kind of broaden that horizon. And
open their willingness to try something that maybe they thought, no, I would never like that. Because that's how I got my teenagers to eat Brussels sprouts.
Oh, wow.
And that's a real sensory nightmare for some kids, because you're thinking that's just a tiny head of, and they were just like, I can't. But them slicing it and quartering it and taking that, and going, okay, now these are the seasonings we're going to put on, and and then we're putting them in the oven, and they're smelling that, and it's like, ooh, that is delicious. And they learn to love that.
Yeah.
But sensory-wise, they were like, we are not eating those little balls of demonic whatever that is.
Right.
Because they were like, no, we're not going to eat it.
A little mini head of cabbage.
It is, and they were just like, we are not. I'm like, but you'll eat coleslaw. So think about, I'm like, it doesn't feel like that, and it doesn't. But opening them up to that and them cooking was like the way to bring it in. So it was a good strategy. I'm glad we stumbled into it.
Oh yeah.
Because after that I could buy a big bag, and they were like, yes.
Yeah.
They're in there. They got it all laid out on a pan and ready to go in and roast. So
now you have just great dinner help.
Yes. That was amazing. I missed that help.
But and I don't want to say that you can for sure heal those things or make those sensory processing issues go away. But a lot of these activities, a lot of these interventions will really help them over time. So they might even get to a place where they're not so avoidant or seeking in that need. So at night, we're trying to calm down. Might be a good time to have just a really calming sensory activity like playing with clay or Play-Doh, painting. Even if your kid doesn't like the tactile touch of like regular finger paints, I've seen things on Pinterest where you put the paint in a baggie And, they can just kind of move the paint around with their fingers. They don't have to get messy. Warm bubble bath, maybe with some calming essential oils or, nice calming smells. Massaging them during that nighttime reading time. Just to, this is a time where whether they're seeking or avoiding, and this is a good time to say that, those things listed here for the night activities would be good to help get a kid calmed down. But that being said, you might need to put a kid on the mini trampoline right before bed, because most of us are like, oh, that's just going to get him wound up. My son does it every night, jumps on his bed, and I think, oh my gosh, he's just going to get wound up. It actually does the opposite.
That last little bit of, oh, it's in me, I got to get it out, Yeah. We actually, when we, because we couldn't get outside for a while, we would go, oh man, I forgot something downstairs. Can you get it for me? And he's one of those greased lightning kids. So he's flying down those stairs and he flies back up, and I'm like, you're going to be so upset with me. I really need you to go down and get one more thing. Then he hops like a bunny down the stairs, and he hops back up, and you're like,
yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you just have to do what feels right.
Yeah.
And will they be cured? Not always, not necessarily, but will it make their lives better? Will it make it easier for them to manage? And that's the goal. That's the parenting goal anyway. That's a win.
Right. And it's not always just that they're not tired from the day's activities already. It's just that it is a sensory need that they need met. And so, that proprioception, especially with jumping, can sometimes be that thing that they really need to have calm them. But again, it could be smells. It could be a nighttime snack, some taste that tends to relax. So it just depends. Again, you have to gauge your kid. SensorySmarts.com is where those examples came from. And again, that will be on the end slide for you to check out for the resources. So here they are, SensorySmarts.com. I found a lot of really helpful information at spdstar.org. AskMeAboutSPD.org, childdevelopment.com. That's kind of a longer one. You can click that link, or I'll also email this out at the end. Your Kids Table, and I've gotten on their mailing list, so I get emails from time to time just with different sensory ideas. And I also thought the OT Toolbox was a really good one. And then there's a couple of books, Raising a Sensory Smart Child and Sensational Kids. But then, like I said, I will also send out the link for the Cosmic Kids Zen Den. And don't forget, I will send out the link for some of those different sensory toys or sensory interventions that Target has they're offering right now. So those are really good things. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat box. We are just a little bit over time here. You can also email me or call me. Foster Adopt Connect's number is 816-350-0215. And my email is pretty easy, Jamie, Jamie, at fosteradopt.org. Somebody just shared a couple of other awesome resources, Lemon Lime Adventures on Facebook. I think I've heard of that. Sensory TheraPlay boxes. Yeah, that's something to look into. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So we're really glad you joined us. We are going to be doing live webinars on the fourth Friday of every month. So definitely come back in June on the fourth Friday. When it's closer to the time, we will share out the topic and give you the link to register for that. When you log off of this, you will get an email, and that will have the links for the resources I shared with you today, as well as some attachments, those handouts that I was telling you about, and your completion certificate. So make sure that you download and print all of those. So again, thanks for joining us, and thanks, Tammy, for being with me.
Glad to be here today.
All right. Well, come back in June, and thanks for coming out today. Bye.